Emma Caldwell tugged at the hem of her borrowed dress for what felt like the 100th time that evening. The soft pink fabric was beautiful, but it belonged to a world she did not inhabit. Around her, crystal chandeliers cast golden light over guests who wore confidence as easily as their designer clothes. The Grandview Hotel ballroom buzzed with conversations about stock portfolios, European vacations, and country club memberships. Emma felt like an actress who had forgotten her lines. Her cousin Melissa had insisted she attend the wedding reception, promising it would be fun. But Melissa was now surrounded by her new husband's wealthy friends, leaving Emma to navigate the social minefield alone. She clutched her small purse and edged toward the exit, hoping to slip away unnoticed. That was when she saw him walking directly toward her, tall and broad-shouldered. The man wore a perfectly tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Emma made in 3 months at Sunrise Bakery. His dark brown hair was slightly tousled, and there was something urgent in his green eyes as he approached. Before Emma could move, he was standing in front of her. "Please help me," he said quietly, his voice low and surprisingly gentle. "I need you to pretend we're together. Just for a few minutes." Emma blinked at him, completely bewildered. "Excuse me? I know how this sounds." He glanced over his shoulder where 2 women in expensive gowns were clearly watching him. "Those ladies have been trying to set me up with various relatives all night. I just need a moment to breathe, please." There was something genuine in his desperation that made Emma's natural kindness override her confusion. "Okay, what do I do?" Relief washed over his features. "Just stand here and talk to me like we know each other. That's all." He guided her gently to a quieter corner near the tall windows overlooking the city. Emma noticed how careful he was, not to touch her more than necessary, his hand barely grazing her elbow. When they stopped, he let out a long breath. "Thank you. I'm James, by the way. James Thornhill. Emma Caldwell." She studied him curiously. "Do people always chase you at parties?" "Only at events like these, where everyone thinks they know what's best for my life." James ran a hand through his hair, looking tired. "I've been a widower for 3 years. And apparently that means I'm fair game for every matchmaking attempt in the city. Sorry about your wife." Emma's voice softened with genuine sympathy. "Thank you." James looked at her more closely now, seeming to really see her for the first time. "You don't seem like you want to be here either." Emma laughed, a light sound that made him smile. "Is it that obvious? My cousin got married today, and somehow I ended up at this reception where everyone talks about things I don't understand. I was actually trying to escape when you found me, so we're both refugees from the same party." James's smile reached his eyes now, transforming his whole face. "What do you do when you're not attending weddings you'd rather avoid?" "I work at a bakery downtown. Sunrise Bakery on Maple Street. I'm an assistant, but I help with decorating cakes and creating new recipes." Emma's face lit up as she talked about her work. "It's not glamorous, but I love it. There's something magical about making things that bring people joy." James listened with an attention that felt rare and precious. Most people at parties like this asked questions without really caring about the answers. But he leaned in slightly, genuinely interested. "That sounds wonderful. What kind of things do you create?" "Well, last week I designed a birthday cake shaped like a castle with edible glitter towers. The little girl who ordered it cried happy tears when she saw it." Emma's eyes sparkled with the memory. "Moments like that make everything worthwhile. You must be talented." James seemed captivated by her enthusiasm. "My daughter Sophie loves anything with princesses and castles. She would adore something like that. How old is she?" 10. She's staying with my mother tonight so I could attend this event." His expression softened when he spoke about his daughter. "She's the best thing in my life. After her mother passed, Sophie and I had to figure out how to be a family of 2. Some days are harder than others." Emma felt her heart squeeze with compassion. "That must be incredibly difficult for both of you." "But Sophie's stronger than I am sometimes." James paused, then asked, "Do you have children?" "No, I'm only not married, no kids. Just me in my tiny apartment and my sourdough starter that I've kept alive for 2 years." Emma smiled self-consciously. "My life is pretty simple compared to all this." Simple sounds perfect right now. James glanced around the opulent ballroom with something like weariness. Everything in my world is complicated. Meetings, expectations, maintaining appearances. Sometimes I forget what it's like to just have a real conversation. They talked for another 40 minutes, long after James's excuse for needing her company had passed. Emma learned that he worked in investment banking, that he loved old mystery novels, that he missed cooking homemade meals because he was always too busy. James discovered that Emma had learned to bake from her grandmother, that she dreamed of someday opening her own small bakery, that she believed kindness was more valuable than money. When the reception began winding down, James seemed reluctant to end their conversation. "Emma, I know this is going to sound strange given how we met, but would it be all right if I stopped by your bakery sometime? I'd love to try your creations. You really want to visit a small bakery on Maple Street?" Emma raised her eyebrows skeptically. "It's nothing fancy. Fancy is overrated." James pulled out his phone. "May I have your number? Just in case I get lost finding the place." Emma hesitated only a moment before sharing her contact information. As they said goodbye, James's hand briefly touched hers, a connection that felt warm and promising. Walking to her car later, Emma could not stop smiling. She had gone to the reception dreading every moment, and somehow she had met someone who made her feel seen and valued. It seemed impossible that James Thornhill, a wealthy banker in an expensive suit, would actually show up at Sunrise Bakery. But something in his eyes had been sincere. She drove home through the quiet city streets, her heart lighter than it had been in months. Sometimes the most unexpected encounters became the most meaningful ones. Emma did not know it yet, but her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. All because a desperate man had asked her to pretend for just a few minutes. 3 days later, the bell above the bakery door chimed, and Emma looked up from the cupcakes she was decorating to see James Thornhill walking in. Looking slightly nervous, but genuinely happy to be there, James stood in the doorway of Sunrise Bakery, looking slightly out of place in his business suit among the cheerful yellow walls and the scent of fresh bread. Emma felt her heart skip when she recognized him. She had wondered if he would actually come, half convinced their connection at the reception had been a fluke. "You came," she said. Unable to hide her smile, "I promised I would." James approached the counter, his eyes scanning the display of pastries and cakes. "Everything looks incredible. What do you recommend?" Emma wiped her hands on her apron, suddenly self-conscious about the flour dusting her clothes. "The cinnamon rolls are fresh from the oven, and the lemon lavender cupcakes are my own recipe. I'll take both." James settled onto one of the small chairs by the window. "And whatever you're having for coffee." Over the next 2 weeks, James became a regular visitor. He would stop by in the mornings before work or during lunch breaks, always finding reasons to linger and talk with Emma. She learned that he was methodical about his coffee, that he had a terrible sweet tooth he tried to hide, that he listened more than he spoke. He discovered that Emma hummed while she worked, that she remembered every customer's favorite order. Her laughter was contagious. One Saturday afternoon, James arrived with a young girl beside him. She had his green eyes and dark hair pulled into 2 braids, and she clutched a worn stuffed rabbit under her arm. "Emma, this is my daughter Sophie." James rested his hand on the girl's shoulder. "Sophie, this is Miss Emma. She's the baker I've been telling you about." Sophie looked up at Emma with curious eyes. "Daddy says you make magic with frosting." Emma crouched down to Sophie's level, her heart melting. "Well, I don't know about magic, but I do try my best." "Do you like baking, Sophie?" The girl nodded enthusiastically. "I help Daddy make pancakes sometimes, but they always turn out lumpy." "That's because your father doesn't let the batter rest," Emma said conspiratorially, making Sophie giggle. "Would you like to help me decorate some cupcakes? I'm working on a special order for a birthday party." Sophie's face lit up brighter than the bakery's lights. "Really? Can I, Daddy?" James smiled, a softness in his expression that Emma had not seen before. "If Miss Emma doesn't mind having an assistant for the afternoon, I would love the company." Emma stood and extended her hand to Sophie. "Come on, let's get you an apron." That afternoon transformed something between the 3 of them. Sophie proved to be a natural, her small hands surprisingly steady as Emma taught her how to pipe frosting roses. James watched from a nearby table, his laptop forgotten as he observed his daughter's joy. Every time Sophie successfully created a design, she would turn to show her father, and his proud smile made Emma's chest feel warm. "Look, Daddy, I made a butterfly." Sophie held up a cupcake decorated with purple and pink frosting wings. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." James walked over to examine her work. "You're a natural artist. Miss Emma is a good teacher." Sophie beamed up at Emma with pure adoration as the afternoon sun streamed through the windows. Turning everything golden, Emma felt something shift inside her. This was not just attraction to James anymore. This was something deeper, more complex. She was falling for both of them, for the quiet man who looked at his daughter like she hung the moon, and for the sweet girl who had lost her mother too young. When it was time to close the bakery, Sophie hugged Emma tightly around the waist. "Thank you for teaching me. Can I come back next week?" "Anytime you want," Emma promised. Meeting James's eyes over his daughter's head, after Sophie ran ahead to the car, James lingered. "Thank you for today. She hasn't been this happy in a long time." "Neither have I, to be honest. I enjoyed it too." Emma fidgeted with her apron strings. "You have an amazing daughter, James. I'd like to take you to dinner." The words came out in a rush, as if he had been holding them back for weeks. "A real date. If you're interested," Emma's smile was her answer. "I'm very interested." Their first official date was at a small Italian restaurant tucked away on a side street. James had chosen it specifically because it was quiet and intimate, nothing like the flashy places his colleagues frequented. Over plates of pasta and glasses of wine, they talked about everything and nothing. James told her about meeting his late wife in college, about the accident that took her 3 years ago, about learning to be both mother and father to Sophie. "Some days, I feel like I'm failing," he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "I work too much because I don't know how else to provide for her. But then, I miss important moments. Last month, I forgot about her school play because of a meeting." Emma reached across the table and took his hand. "You're not failing. You show up, you love her, you're trying. That's what matters. And James, you're allowed to have a life too. You're allowed to be happy again." His fingers tightened around hers. "I haven't felt this way since before the accident. It scares me a little." "It scares me too," Emma confessed. "But maybe that means it's real." He kissed that night outside the restaurant, a gentle meeting of lips that promised something beautiful and lasting. When they pulled apart, James rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right," he whispered. "With you, with Sophie. I want to build something real. So do I." The following months unfolded like pages in a storybook. James integrated Emma into his and Sophie's life with careful consideration, making sure his daughter was comfortable every step of the way. Sophie adored Emma, often asking when they could visit the bakery or if Emma could come to dinner. Emma taught Sophie more baking techniques, and the girl's confidence grew with every successful recipe. For Sophie's 11th birthday, Emma and James planned a party together at the bakery after hours. Emma had created a 3-tier princess castle cake with towers made of sugar cones and edible pearls. When Sophie saw it, she burst into tears of joy. "It's the most beautiful cake I've ever seen." She threw her arms around Emma. "You're the best, Miss Emma. I wish you could be with us forever." Over Sophie's head, Emma's eyes met James's. The emotion in his gaze made her breath catch. They both knew what Sophie's innocent wish meant. This was becoming a family, slowly and naturally. It's built on genuine affection rather than convenience. One evening, after Sophie had gone to bed, James and Emma sat on his back porch overlooking the garden. The summer air was warm and filled with the scent of jasmine. "I need to tell you something," James said, his voice serious. "My mother wants to meet you." Emma felt a flutter of nervousness. "That sounds important." "It is. She's very protective of Sophie and of me. After my wife died, my mother became even more involved in our lives. She means well, but she can be difficult." James took Emma's hand. "I want her to meet you because you're important to me. To us, I want to meet her too." Emma squeezed his hand, trying to sound braver than she felt. "When? Next Sunday?" "Family dinner at her house." James pulled Emma closer. "Fair warning. She's going to ask a million questions and probably judge everything from your shoes to your career choices. Good thing I'm used to handling difficult customers at the bakery, Emma joked. Though her stomach was already nodding with anxiety, James kissed her temple. You're going to be amazing. Just be yourself. That's all Sophie and I need. But as Emma drove home that night, she could not shake the feeling that meeting James's mother would be a test she was not sure she could pass. The Thornhill family came from old money and generations of social standing. She was a baker from a working-class background who lived paycheck to paycheck. Would that be enough for a woman who expected her son to marry within his social circle? The question haunted Emma as she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling. She had fallen completely in love with James and Sophie. The thought of losing them because she did not measure up to some arbitrary standard made her chest ache. But she also knew she could not pretend to be someone she was not. Whatever happened at that family dinner, Emma would have to face it as herself. Hoping that love would be enough to bridge the gap between their different worlds. The Thornhill family estate sat behind iron gates and manicured lawns that seemed to stretch forever. Emma's hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel as she pulled up the circular driveway. James had offered to pick her up, but she had insisted on driving herself. Needing the independence and the escape route if things went badly, James met her at the front door. Handsome in casual slacks and a button-down shirt. He kissed her cheek and whispered, "You look beautiful. Breathe. It's going to be fine." Sophie came bounding down the hallway, her face lighting up. "Emma, you're here. Come see the garden. Grandmother has roses everywhere." But before Emma could follow, a tall woman with silver hair and sharp blue eyes appeared in the doorway to the dining room. Margaret Thornhill wore pearls and judgment in equal measure, her gaze sweeping over Emma from head to toe. "You're the baker," she said, her tone neutral but her implication clear. Not an heiress, not a lawyer, not someone from their world. Just a baker. "Yes, ma'am." Emma Caldwell. Emma extended her hand, willing it not to shake. "Thank you for inviting me to your home." Margaret's handshake was brief and cool. "James speaks highly of you. Sophie talks of little else. I thought it was time we met properly." Dinner was an exercise in polite interrogation. Margaret asked about Emma's family background, her education, her career aspirations, each question designed to highlight the differences between Emma's modest upbringing and the Thornhill legacy. James tried to steer the conversation to safer topics, but his mother was relentless. "So you work at someone else's bakery?" Margaret said over the main course. "Do you have plans to advance your career, or is this a temporary position?" Emma set down her fork carefully. "I love what I do, Mrs. Thornhill. I'm learning the business side while I save money. Eventually, I'd like to open my own place, but I'm taking my time to do it right." How practical. The words dripped with condescension. "Though I imagine it must be difficult to support yourself on a baker's salary. The cost of living in this city is quite high," Mother James said sharply. "That's enough. I'm simply making conversation, James." Margaret turned her attention to Emma again. "You must understand my concern. My son is a successful man with considerable responsibilities. Sophie needs stability and someone who understands the demands of our family's position in society." Emma felt heat rising to her cheeks. But before she could respond, Sophie spoke up, her young voice clear and firm. "Grandmother, that's not fair. Emma is the kindest person I know. She makes me and Daddy happy. Isn't that what matters?" The table fell silent. Margaret looked surprised that her granddaughter had challenged her, while James's eyes shone with pride. Emma felt tears threatening and blinked them back. "Sophie," Margaret began, but the girl was not finished. "Mommy would have liked Emma," Sophie continued, her voice wavering slightly but determined. "She always said the most important thing was being good to people. Emma is good to us. She teaches me things and makes Daddy smile again. Why doesn't that count?" James reached over and squeezed his daughter's hand, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Emma could not hold back a tear that slipped down her cheek. Margaret was quiet for a long moment, studying the three of them. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. "You're right, Sophie. Your mother did value kindness above all else. Perhaps I've forgotten that in my concern for your future." The tension did not completely disappear, but something shifted. Margaret began asking Emma genuine questions about baking, seeming surprised by the complexity and artistry involved. By the time dessert arrived, the conversation had become almost pleasant. As they were leaving, Margaret pulled Emma aside while James was helping Sophie with her coat. "I was harsh with you tonight," the older woman said quietly. "I apologize. Losing my daughter-in-law was devastating, and I've been terrified of James and Sophie getting hurt again. But I can see that you care for them genuinely. That matters more than I wanted to admit." Emma nodded, accepting the olive branch. "I do care for them, Mrs. Thornhill, very much, and perhaps we can start over. Call me Margaret." 3 months later, Emma was supervising the installation of new ovens when James appeared at the bakery with an enormous grin on his face. "I have news," he announced. "Remember that property you liked on 5th Street? The one with the big windows in the corner location?" Emma's heart skipped. "The old bookstore building? It's been for sale forever. Not anymore. I bought it. For you. For your bakery?" James pulled papers from his briefcase. "Consider it an investment in your dream and in our future." Emma stared at him, overwhelmed. "James, I can't accept something that expensive. It's too much. It's not a gift. It's a business investment. You'll pay me back through the profits." He took her hands. "Emma, you're brilliant at what you do. You deserve a space that matches your talent. Let me help make that happen." Tears streamed down Emma's face as she threw her arms around him. "Thank you. Thank you." Opening Emma's second location took 6 months of hard work. She designed every detail, from the vintage-style display cases to the cozy reading nook where customers could enjoy their pastries. Sophie helped choose paint colors and designed the logo, a simple sunrise over a rolling pin. James handled the business paperwork and financing, turning Emma's dream into a practical reality. The grand opening was scheduled for a Saturday in spring. Emma arrived early to do final preparations, her stomach fluttering with excitement and nerves. She was arranging fresh flowers on the tables when she heard the door open. "We're not quite open yet," she called without turning around. "Even for your biggest fans." Emma spun to find James and Sophie standing in the doorway. But they were not alone. Behind them stood what looked like half the neighborhood, holding flowers and gift bags and wearing bright smiles. Margaret was there too, looking elegant and surprisingly warm. "What is all this?" Emma asked, bewildered. "We couldn't let you open this place without a proper celebration," James said, walking toward her. "You've worked so hard for this moment." Sophie ran forward and hugged Emma. "We're so proud of you." As friends and customers began filing in, admiring the space and sampling treats, James guided Emma to the quieter back corner near the kitchen. His expression was nervous, but determined. "I've been planning something," he said. "I wanted to wait for the perfect moment, and I think this is it. You're opening this beautiful place that represents your dreams coming true. And I want to be part of all your dreams, Emma. Every single one." He dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Emma gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. "Emma Caldwell, you walked into my life when I had forgotten how to really live. You brought joy back to our home, taught my daughter to dream big, and showed me that love can bloom more than once in a lifetime. Will you marry me? Will you officially become part of our family?" "Yes." Emma's voice was choked with happy tears. "Yes, absolutely yes." James slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her as the crowd erupted in cheers. Sophie rushed over to hug them both, squealing with delight. Margaret dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, smiling genuinely for the first time since Emma had met her. The grand opening was even more successful than Emma had hoped. Customers loved the warm atmosphere and exceptional pastries. Local food bloggers wrote glowing reviews. Within a month, Emma had hired 2 assistants and was already considering expanding the menu. But the best moment came 6 months later. On a crisp October afternoon, when Emma married James in the original Sunrise Bakery. They had considered fancy venues and elaborate ceremonies. But Emma had insisted on the place where their relationship had truly begun. Surrounded by the scent of cinnamon and vanilla and the warmth of freshly baked bread, Sophie served as maid of honor. Wearing a pale yellow dress and carrying a bouquet of sunflowers, she had written a poem for the ceremony about families being like recipes. requiring different ingredients that blend together to create something wonderful. There was not a dry eye in the bakery. When she finished reading it, Margaret surprised everyone by offering a toast that was genuinely warm. "I'll admit I had my doubts at first," she said, raising her glass. "But Emma has proven that love and character matter far more than social standing or bank accounts. She's brought my family back to life, and for that, I'm eternally grateful. Welcome to the family, Emma." As the sun set and the reception continued, Emma and James slipped outside for a quiet moment alone. The city lights were beginning to twinkle, and the air was cool and perfect. "Happy?" James asked, pulling her close. Deliriously, Emma leaned into his embrace. "Who would have thought that a desperate plea at a party would lead to all this? I think about that moment constantly." James kissed her forehead. "I was so lonely that night, so tired of pretending. And then you appeared, kind and real and perfect. You saved me, Emma. You saved each other," she corrected gently. "You believed in my dreams when I was too scared to believe in them myself. You and Sophie gave me a family I never knew I needed." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the evening unfold. Inside, Sophie was teaching Margaret how to frost cupcakes, both of them laughing at their messy attempts. Emma's parents were chatting with James's business partners, all social barriers dissolved in the warmth of celebration. "Do you remember what I said to you that first night?" James asked quietly. "When I asked you to pretend. Of course, you said you needed help and asked me to pretend we were together." James turned her to face him, his green eyes serious and full of love. "The irony is that I was asking you to pretend something that became the most real thing in my life. This marriage, this family, this love, it's more authentic than anything I've ever experienced." Emma touched his face tenderly. "No more pretending. Only truth from now on?" "Only truth," James agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss as they returned to the party. Emma caught Sophie's eye through the window. The girl waved enthusiastically, her face glowing with happiness. Emma waved back, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. She had gone to that party months ago, feeling lost and out of place, ready to escape at the first opportunity. Instead, she had found her home, not in a location or building, but in the hearts of two people who needed her as much as she needed them. Sometimes the best love stories began with a simple request from a stranger, a moment of kindness that opened the door to forever. The bakery lights glowed warm and golden as friends and family celebrated inside, filling the space with laughter and joy. Emma Thornhill smiled, knowing that every future morning would begin here, in this place she had built, with the family she had found, creating sweetness in all its forms for a world that so desperately needed it, and somewhere in heaven. Emma liked to think a woman named Clara was smiling too, grateful that her husband and daughter had found love again. That happiness had returned to the home she had left behind. That life had continued in the most beautiful way possible. The end. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like. Share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to DCannel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories. The Manhattan skyline glowed against the purple twilight as Jessica Carter saved the final spreadsheet on her computer. Thursday evening at Sterling Enterprises, and empty hallways and the soft hum of air conditioning replacing the usual buzz of activity. She glanced at the clock. 7:15 p.m. Most of her colleagues had left hours ago, but Jessica had stayed behind to perfect every detail of the quarterly financial report. At 26, Jessica had worked at Sterling Enterprises for 3 years, steadily climbing from junior analyst to her current position. Her dedication was unmatched, her attention to detail legendary among the accounting department. But lately, she wondered if her commitment came at too high a price. Her studio apartment in Queens felt more like a hotel room than a home, and her social life consisted mainly of coffee breaks with coworkers. She stretched her arms above her head, feeling the tension in her shoulders from hours hunched over spreadsheets. Her dark hair had fallen loose from its morning bun, and she tucked a strand behind her ear as she printed the final report. The printer hummed to life, spitting out page after page of meticulously compiled data. "Still here, Jessica?" called Tom from passing by with his backpack already slung over his shoulder. "Just finishing up the Pierce report," She replied with a tired smile. Tom whistled low. Rather you than me. That man terrifies half the office. Jessica laughed softly, though she understood the sentiment. Ethan Pierce had joined Sterling Enterprises as Director of Investment Strategy 6 months ago. Transferred from the Chicago office after his divorce, he was brilliant, demanding, and maintained a professional distance that some mistook for coldness. Jessica had learned to appreciate his direct communication style and high standards. Even when they pushed her to her limits, she gathered the printed pages, sliding them into a leather portfolio folder. Her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed down her navy blouse and adjusted her glasses. There was no rational reason for her nervousness. She had delivered dozens of reports before, yet something about Ethan Pierce made her heart race in ways she refused to examine too closely. The executive floor was even quieter than her own. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city spread out below, millions of lights twinkling like earthbound stars. Jessica's heels clicked against the polished marble as she approached Ethan's office, the sound echoing in the empty space. His door stood partially open, warm light spilling into the hallway. She could see him through the gap, jacket discarded over his chair, sleeves rolled up to his elbows as he studied something on his computer screen. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he had run his fingers through it multiple times. Even exhausted and focused, he carried an intensity that made Jessica's pulse quicken. She knocked gently on the doorframe. "Come in," he said without looking up. "Mr. Pierce, I have the quarterly report you requested." At the sound of her voice, his head lifted and his expression softened slightly. "Jessica, I was hoping you would finish it tonight." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Please, sit. I want to go through some of the projections with you." She entered his office, acutely aware of how intimate the space felt with just the two of them. The usual protective barrier of other employees and daily chaos was gone, leaving only silence and possibility. She placed the portfolio on his desk and sat down. Smoothing her skirt nervously, Ethan opened the report, his eyes scanning the first page with practiced efficiency. Jessica watched his face, looking for any reaction. After 3 years of analyzing numbers, she had learned to read people's expressions when they reviewed her work. But Ethan remained unreadable, his features composed as he turned page after page. "These risk assessments for the European market," he said finally, tapping a particular section. "This is exceptional analysis. How did you factor in the currency fluctuations?" Jessica leaned forward, her earlier nervousness dissolving as she entered her comfort zone. "I used a 3-year historical model combined with current political indicators. The Brexit aftermath is still creating ripples, and I wanted to account for continued instability." "Smart." He looked up at her, and for the first time since she had started working under him, she saw genuine admiration in his eyes. "You have a gift for seeing patterns others miss." Heat crept up her neck. "Thank you. I just try to be thorough. It's more than thoroughness." Ethan leaned back in his chair, studying her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You have intuition that cannot be taught." The compliment hung in the air between them. Jessica suddenly became aware of how late it was, how alone they were, how the soft lighting made his office feel less like a workplace and more like somewhere intimate and private. "Can I ask you something?" Ethan's voice was quieter now, less like her boss and more like a person, of course. "Do you ever feel like you are living half a life?" The question came out of nowhere, catching Jessica completely off guard. "Like you are so focused on one thing that everything else just fades away?" She blinked, uncertain how to respond to such a personal question. "I suppose I do sometimes." Ethan stood and walked to the window, his hands in his pockets. "I moved to New York 6 months ago, thinking a fresh start would fix everything. New city, new job, new possibilities. But I brought all my old habits with me." He turned to face her. "I work until I am exhausted so I do not have to think about how empty my apartment feels." Jessica's heart ached at the vulnerability in his voice. She stood slowly, drawn toward him despite every professional instinct telling her to maintain distance. "Mr. Pierce, I don't think that makes you unusual. A lot of us use work as an escape." "Ethan," he corrected softly. "When it is just us, call me Ethan." The use of his first name felt dangerous and thrilling. "Ethan," she repeated, the word strange on her tongue. He moved closer. She could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive. "Jessica, I need to be honest with you about something." His eyes searched hers. "These past 6 months, working with you, I have looked forward to our meetings more than anything else in my day." Her breath caught. "I have to. This is completely inappropriate," he continued, though he did not step back. "You work for me. There are policies and protocols and 100 reasons why I should not be saying this. Then why are you?" Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "Because I am tired of always doing the right thing. My entire marriage was about following rules and meeting expectations, and it left me hollow." His hand lifted, hesitating near her face, before gently tucking that loose strand of hair behind her ear. "With you, I feel awake again." Jessica knew she should step back, should remind him of professional boundaries, should protect both their careers. But instead, she found herself leaning into his touch. "I feel it too." For a long moment, they simply stood there, the city lights glowing behind them, the rest of the world forgotten. Then Ethan's phone buzzed loudly on his desk, shattering the moment. They both stepped back quickly, the spell broken. "I should go," Jessica said, her voice shaky. "Jessica, wait." Ethan ran his hand through his hair, looking as conflicted as she felt. "I am sorry. That was completely out of line." "No, it wasn't." She met his eyes steadily. "It was honest. And maybe that is exactly what scared me." She turned and walked toward the door, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. As she reached the threshold, his voice stopped her. "Jessica." She looked back. "Tomorrow, would you have coffee with me?" "Not as your boss. Just as someone who would like to know you better." Every reasonable part of her brain screamed that this was a mistake. But her heart, that neglected organ she had ignored for so long, whispered something different. "Yes," she heard herself say. "I would like that." As Jessica walked back to her desk to collect her things, she felt breathless, exhilarated, and terrified, all at once. She had walked into that office to deliver a simple report. She was walking out with something far more complicated and precious, the possibility of something real. Friday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made New York feel alive with possibility. Jessica woke earlier than usual, her stomach fluttering with nervous anticipation. She changed outfits 3 times before settling on a burgundy sweater dress that felt professional, yet feminine. As she applied her makeup with more care than normal, she caught herself smiling at her reflection. The coffee meeting was set for 10 a.m., at a small cafe 3 blocks from the office. Far enough to avoid coworkers, but close enough to seem casual. Jessica arrived 5 minutes early, ordering a latte and claiming a corner table. Her hands wrapped around the warm cup as she watched the door. Ethan entered exactly on time, dressed more casually than she had ever seen him in dark jeans and a gray sweater under his coat. Without the armor of his business suit, he looked younger, more approachable. His face lit up when he spotted her, and Jessica felt her heart skip. "I was afraid you might change your mind," he admitted. Sitting across from her, "I almost did about 6 times this morning," she confessed with a nervous laugh. They talked for 2 hours, the conversation flowing effortlessly from childhood memories to favorite books to dreams they had abandoned along the way. Jessica learned that Ethan had wanted to be an architect before his father pushed him toward finance. He discovered that she had once planned to teach mathematics before student loans forced her into corporate life. "We should probably head back," Ethan said reluctantly, checking his watch. "Though I wish we could stay here all day." As they walked back to the office, something shifted between them. The connection from the previous night had deepened into something more substantial. Jessica felt seen in a way she never had before. Understood beyond her work performance and professional capabilities. But the moment they entered the Sterling Enterprises lobby, reality crashed back. Diana Chen, Jessica's closest friend from the marketing department, was waiting by the elevators. Her eyes widened when she saw Jessica and Ethan arrive together, both flushed and smiling. "Jessica, can I talk to you for a moment?" Diana's tone was carefully neutral, but her expression spoke volumes. In the women's restroom, Diana turned to her friend with concern etched across her features. Please tell me you know what you are doing. We just had coffee, Jessica protested, though the defensive tone in her voice betrayed her. Jessica, he is the director of investment strategy. You report directly to him. Diana gripped her friend's shoulders. I love you, and I want you to be happy, but this could destroy your career. You know how this company is about relationships between superiors and subordinates? We are not in a relationship. We are just getting to know each other. Diana's expression softened with sympathy. Honey, the way you are glowing right now tells a different story. Just be careful, okay? The corporate world is not kind to women who date their bosses, no matter how genuine the feelings are. The warning echoed in Jessica's mind all afternoon. But it could not diminish the warmth she felt when Ethan sent her a text during lunch. Thank you for this morning. You made my day brighter. Over the next 2 weeks, they continued meeting for coffee, then lunches, then dinner after work. They were careful to keep their interactions professional in the office, but the connection between them grew stronger with each conversation. Ethan shared the pain of his divorce, how his ex-wife had accused him of being emotionally unavailable, how he had thrown himself into work to avoid dealing with his loneliness. Jessica opened up about her fear of never being good enough, of sacrificing her personal life on the altar of professional success. I see you, Jessica, Ethan told her one evening over Italian food in a quiet restaurant in Brooklyn. Not just the brilliant analyst, but the woman who hums while she works, who brings homemade cookies for her team on Fridays, who still believes in kindness even in a cutthroat industry. And I see you, she replied, reaching across the table to take his hand. The man who actually listens when people talk, who remembers details about their lives, who carries the weight of responsibility because he genuinely cares about doing right by others. Their first kiss happened that night, on a quiet street corner under the glow of streetlights. It was gentle and tentative, full of promise and possibility, but paradise never lasts long in the real world. The following Monday, Jessica noticed the whispers, conversations that stopped when she entered the break room. Knowing glances exchanged between coworkers, she tried to ignore it, burying herself in work, but the uncomfortable feeling persisted. During lunch, Diana pulled her aside urgently. The rumors have started. Someone saw you and Ethan at that restaurant in Brooklyn. The story is spreading through the office like wildfire. Jessica felt her stomach drop. What are people saying? That you are sleeping with the boss to get ahead. That your recent assignment to the Henderson account was favoritism. That Ethan is taking advantage of a younger employee. Diana's voice was pained. None of it is fair or true, but you know how quickly these things spiral. By Tuesday afternoon, Jessica was called to Human Resources. Patricia Morrison, the stern head of HR, sat behind her desk with a file folder open in front of her. The 40-minute conversation was professional, but pointed. Sterling Enterprises had strict policies about relationships between supervisors and subordinates. The situation created conflicts of interest and opened the company to liability concerns. I want to be clear, Ms. Carter, Patricia said firmly. Your job performance has been exemplary. This is not about your capabilities. However, the appearance of impropriety can be as damaging as actual impropriety. We need to address this situation immediately. Jessica left the HR office feeling humiliated and angry. She had worked so hard to build her reputation, and now it was being questioned because of her personal life. That evening, she and Ethan met at their cafe, both visibly shaken. They called me in too, Ethan revealed, his jaw tight. Patricia laid out our options. One of us transfers to a different department where there is no reporting relationship. One of us takes a position at another Sterling office. Or one of us leaves the company. This is not fair, Jessica's voice cracked. Why should we have to choose between our careers and each other? Because that is how the corporate world works. Ethan reached for her hand. But Jessica, I want you to know something. Whatever you decide to do, it will not change how I feel about you. If you need to distance yourself from me, I will understand. She looked at him, this man who had awakened something in her she thought had died years ago. What if I do not want to give you up? Then we figure this out together. Over the next week, the pressure intensified. Jessica's coworkers began treating her differently. some with cold professionalism, others with barely concealed judgment. Even her work assignments seemed to carry additional scrutiny. As if everyone was looking for evidence that she had not earned her position fairly, the breaking point came during a department.
What?
A senior analyst who had always resented Jessica's rapid advancement made a snide comment about people who climbed the ladder through their personal lives rather than their professional skills. The room fell silent. Ethan's face darkened with anger, but before he could respond, Jessica stood. "I have worked at this company for 3 years," she said, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. "I have exceeded every performance metric taken on projects no one else wanted, and consistently delivered results that benefited this entire department. My personal life is exactly that, personal, and I will not apologize for finding happiness or let anyone diminish my accomplishments." She gathered her materials and walked out, leaving stunned silence in her wake. That evening, Ethan appeared at her apartment door. "That was the bravest thing I have ever seen," he said when she opened the door. "It was probably career suicide," she replied, but allowed him to pull her into an embrace. "Patricia called me after the meeting," Ethan said softly. "Sterling is offering you a position as regional financial manager at the Boston office. It is a significant promotion with a substantial raise. You would have your own team and complete autonomy." Jessica pulled back to look at him. "Boston, that is 4 hours away, I know." His expression was pained. "But it also gets you out from under my supervision. It gives you a chance to prove yourself in an environment where no one questions your capabilities. And what about us?" Ethan cupped her face in his hands. "I have been thinking about that. I could leave Sterling, start my own consulting firm. I have been wanting to do it for years, but never had the courage. My work is not tied to a physical location the way yours is. I cannot ask you to give up your career for me. You are not asking. I am choosing." He kissed her forehead. "Jessica, my marriage failed because I never put relationship before ambition. I learned the hard way that professional success means nothing if you are alone. I do not want to make that mistake again." They spent hours talking through scenarios and possibilities. The Boston position was genuinely impressive, the kind of opportunity that could launch Jessica's career into an entirely new trajectory. And Ethan's dream of independent consulting had been brewing for years. "What if we fail?" Jessica whispered as they sat together on her couch, the city lights twinkling through her window. "Then we fail together," Ethan replied. "But what if we succeed?" Jessica accepted the Boston position the following Monday. The announcement was met with mixed reactions at Sterling Enterprises. Some colleagues congratulated her genuinely, others whispered that she was running away from scandal. Jessica held her head high, focusing on the opportunity ahead rather than the judgment behind her. Her last 2 weeks in New York passed in a blur of transition meetings and farewell lunches. Diana threw her a goodbye party at their favorite wine bar, where tears and laughter mixed freely. "You were doing the right thing," Diana assured her. "Sometimes we have to leave to grow, even when it hurts." Ethan submitted his resignation the same week, shocking the executive team. He had already secured 3 consulting clients and was in negotiations with 2 more. The risk was terrifying but exhilarating. On Jessica's last day, Ethan met her outside the Sterling building after she had turned in her security badge and cleared out her desk. They stood on the sidewalk, surrounded by rushing pedestrians, both carrying boxes of their professional lives. "1 year," Jessica said firmly. "I need 1 year in Boston to prove to myself that I earned this position, to show that I can succeed completely on my own merit." "1 year," Ethan agreed. "I will build my business. You will build your career, and we will figure out what comes next." "You could meet someone else." Jessica's voice wavered. "Someone less complicated." Ethan set down his box and pulled her close, right there on the busy Manhattan street. "Jessica Carter, I waited 34 years to feel this way about someone. I can wait another year." Boston welcomed Jessica with autumn leaves and new beginnings. Her apartment in Back Bay was small but charming, with exposed brick walls and large windows that let in morning light. The Sterling Boston office was smaller than New York, the friendlier culture and less cutthroat competition. Her new team consisted of 4 analysts, all eager to learn from her. For the first time in her career, Jessica had the authority to implement her own methods and strategies. Within 3 months, her department had increased efficiency by 18%. Within 6 months, she was being consulted on projects across the entire Northeast region. But the real transformation happened outside of work. Jessica joined a community orchestra, picking up the violin she had abandoned in college. She made friends who knew nothing about finance or corporate hierarchies. She discovered coffee shops and bookstores and running trails along the Charles River. She rediscovered herself as a complete person. Not just a professional identity, Ethan's consulting firm. Pierce's strategic solutions exceeded all expectations. His reputation for brilliant analysis combined with ethical practices attracted clients quickly. He hired 2 associates and leased office space in downtown Manhattan. He also traveled frequently, which kept him busy and distracted from the loneliness of Jessica's absence. They talked every day, sometimes for hours, sometimes just quick check-ins between meetings. They video chatted on weekends, sharing their lives through screens. The distance was difficult, but also clarifying. They learned to communicate openly, to support each other's victories, to comfort each other's defeats. "I miss you" became their constant refrain. But also, their reminder of what they were building toward. 7 months into their separation, Ethan visited Boston for the first time. Jessica met him at South Station, her heart pounding as she scanned the crowd for his familiar face. When their eyes met across the busy terminal, both broke into spontaneous smiles. "You look different," Ethan said, pulling her into an embrace. Different how? Lighter, happier. He studied her face. "Boston is good for you." They spent the weekend exploring the city together, walking the Freedom Trail, eating cannoli in the North End, visiting the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. It felt like a honeymoon and a reunion all at once. Sunday night, as they sat on her couch with takeout containers scattered on the coffee table, reality returned. "For more months," Jessica said softly. "For more months," Ethan echoed. "And then what?" "Then we figure out our next chapter." The final months flew by quickly. Jessica was offered a permanent position as regional director, overseeing all Sterling offices in New England. The promotion came with a significant salary increase and the respect she had fought so hard to earn. No one in Boston questioned whether she deserved her position or whispered about her personal life. Ethan's firm secured a major contract with a Boston-based investment company, giving him a legitimate business reason to spend significant time in the city. He began looking at office spaces in Boston, considering expansion. On the 1-year anniversary of Jessica's move, Ethan arrived at her apartment with a bouquet of flowers and a serious expression. They sat together on her couch, the same couch where they had made their agreement to wait. "I've been thinking," Ethan began, taking her hands in his. "This year apart was necessary. We both needed to prove to ourselves and the world that we could succeed independently. But Jessica, I do not want to spend another year without you." "Neither do I," she admitted, tears forming in her eyes. "Move in with me. Not in New York, not in Boston, but somewhere that is ours. Somewhere we choose together." He pulled out a small velvet box. "And marry me? Not because it is convenient or expected, but because I cannot imagine my life without you in it." Jessica opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. Through her tears, she laughed. "You are supposed to get on one knee." "I am a consultant, not a traditionalist." Ethan grinned, but he slid off the couch onto one knee anyway. "Jessica Carter, will you marry me?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes to all of it." 6 months later, they married in a small ceremony in a botanical garden in Providence, Rhode Island. The city that sat perfectly between Boston and New York, Diana was Jessica's maid of honor. Ethan's younger brother served as best man. Jessica's team from Boston attended, as did several of Ethan's clients who had become friends. They bought a house in Providence with an office for Ethan's consulting work and a music room for Jessica's violin. She continued as regional director, traveling to Boston 3 days a week. He split his time between clients in both cities. They created a life that honored both their professional ambitions and their personal happiness. 2 years after that night, when Jessica had walked into Ethan's office to deliver a simple report, she stood in their home office, reviewing quarterly projections for her region. Ethan entered with 2 cups of coffee, setting one beside her computer. "Working late again?" he asked, kissing the top of her head. "Just finishing up." She saved her document and turned to face him. "Remember when we thought we had to choose between career and love? Our younger, more foolish selves," Ethan smiled. "We were not foolish. We were scared." Jessica stood and wrapped her arms around his waist. "But we chose both. And we built something better than either of us imagined." "The best investment I ever made," Ethan murmured against her hair. Outside their window, the Providence skyline glowed softly in the evening light. Inside, surrounded by the life they had built together through courage and patience and unwavering faith in each other, Jessica Carter and Ethan Pierce had found something rare and precious, a love that enhanced rather than competed with their ambitions. A partnership that made both of them better, stronger, more complete. She had walked into his office breathless with possibility. She had walked out into a life beyond her wildest dreams, and every single risk, every difficult choice, every moment of uncertainty had been worth it. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like. Share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.